0800 hours, the skies over Hormuz were torn apart by the sirens of the general quarters as the U.S. superfleet switched to its highest state of combat readiness. A frenzied event far exceeding all intelligence predictions was unfolding. The destroyer USS Delbert D was directly targeting the command center of Iran's $1.5 billion aircraft carrier Shahid Bagheri with its SPY-6 fire control radar. Underwater 20 IRGC fast attack craft had opened their torpedo tubes, locking onto a deadly pincer movement at the world's energy lifeline. Above FA-18S from the aircraft carrier, Abraham Lincoln roared overhead, laser-guided targeting each Shahid drone launcher. One wrong heartbeat and World War III would erupt, incinerating the global economy. Tehran believed it had cornered the American giant, but just as its finger was on the trigger, a horrifying truth suddenly appeared on the radar screen, stunning all the commanding officers. What was really happening in the shadows of the ocean? The strategic standoff in the Strait of Hormuz has evolved into a high-stakes laboratory for 21st century asymmetric warfare. To understand why Tehran would gamble its regional prestige on a single mission, you have to look at the Frankenstein logic of their maritime strategy. Lacking the industrial base to build a conventional carrier, the IRGC performed tactical surgery on a massive 250-meter commercial container hull. By adding an angled flight deck and bolting on dozens of suicide drone launchers and Zulfikar missile racks, they created the Shahid Bagheri. It is a $1.5 billion mobile fortress, a slow-moving target on paper. But in the narrow confines of the strait, it acts as a lethal Tier 1 decoy designed to lock down the world's most vital energy artery. At 8:42 a.m., the standoff turned into a spectral nightmare as the USS Delbert D maintained a steady 18 knots. The Shahid Bagheri began flooding the atmosphere with high-powered electronic white noise. Simultaneously, 20 IRGC fast attack craft fanned out in a crescent formation, attempting to herd the American destroyer toward the jagged Iranian coastline. The crew of the Black remained in total EMCON silence, but as the SPY-6 radar delayered the Bagheri's signature, the digital godbrain flagged a terrifying discrepancy. The signals screaming from the Iranian ship weren't coming from drone control stations, they were being emitted by powerful simulator generators bolted to the deck. The Shahid Bagheri was an electronic ghost, a multi-billion-dollar shell designed to lure the American Aegis system into wasting its entire missile magazine on a hollow target. The true kill shot was lurking beneath the swells. While the world's eyes were fixed on the surface, carrier Tehran had deployed a swarm of Ghadir-Class mini-subs and autonomous UUVs directly beneath the hulls of passing civilian oil tankers. These predators were using the massive engine noise of the merchant ships as a physical and acoustic shield, receiving intermittent low-frequency command bursts from controllers hidden in the coastal cliffs. The snakes of the deep were crawling along the seabed less than 2,000 yards from the Black's propellers. How does the U.S. Navy solve a needle-in-a-haystack problem when a 300,000-ton oil tanker is being used as a living shield? If we fire, we risk an ecological apocalypse. 8:50 a.m., the Hormuz chessboard was in a state of extreme imbalance. While the decoy ship Shahid Bagheri was still snarling on the surface, to attract attention, Iranian Ghadir-Class mini-submarines and unmanned underwater vehicles UUVs had silently approached the USS Delbert D to within less than 2,000 yards. They were employing a devastating tactic, lurking beneath the belly of the civilian supertanker Majestic Sapphire, a 300,000-ton monster, to use the enormous engine noise to mask their own sonic signature. Searching for a mini-submarine under the shadow of a giant oil tanker is like trying to hear a mosquito buzzing in the middle of a blazing rock concert. If the U.S. mistakenly fired on the tanker, a global environmental and economic catastrophe would erupt immediately. This is where Iran would use civilians as human shields for their final blow. However, the U.S. Navy is... From the deck of the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, two MH-60R Seahawk anti-submarine helicopters, Seawolves, cut through the emerging fog, deploying a dense network of AN/SS Q-53G passive sonar buoys around the oil tanker formation. 9:05 a.m. The U.S. began its underwater acoustic surgery. Instead of traditional algorithms, the Seahawk's processing system used a fusion algorithm to strip away thousands of layers of noise from the oil tankers, precisely isolating the characteristic low-frequency sounds from the Ghadir's propellers. We didn't need to look. We were mapping the entire seabed with supercomputer hearing. Realizing the acoustic trap was being deciphered, the Shahid Bagheri decided to play its cards openly. It suddenly switched on its fire control radar, locking onto the Seahawk helicopters, hoping to use air pressure to force them to retreat. But the USS Delbert D had a cold response in store. Instead of responding with missiles, the Flight 3 destroyer employed acoustic signature masking, concealing its acoustic signature. By adjusting the flow around its propellers and activating simulated acoustic devices, the Black created an acoustic ghost to deceive the Iranian submarine sensors. It led the enemy to believe the American ship had changed course and was in a completely different location several miles away. Iran thought they were closing in, but in reality, they were chasing a digital illusion created by the US. While the enemy was still grappling with the ghost, the USS Delbert D silently transmitted the full coordinates of the real target to a Virginia-class submarine submerged deep below. The hunter has officially become the hunted without even knowing it. Do you believe in the power of the US Navy? If so, please comment 1. 9:15 a.m., the tactical atmosphere inside the command center of the Shahid Bagheri, the Iranian mobile fortress, undergoes a terrifying transition from predatory confidence to total digital paralysis. Tehran's commanders watching their mission control screens expect to see the final flight path of their massive Shahed drone swarm as it closes in for the kill. Instead, they are met with a blizzard of flickering icons and integrity failure warnings. This wasn't a standard blunt force jamming attack, it was a surgical, logical corruption executed by the invisible hand of the American global shield. High above the strait, two EA-18G Growlers from the USS Abraham Lincoln had already established a high-gain digital tether with the USS Delbert D SEU's Block 3 system. Together, they weren't just flooding the airwaves with white noise, they were performing a spectral autopsy on the swarm's control links. By utilizing machine-assisted signal processing, the U.S. Navy identified the exact timing intervals and data checksums that kept the hundreds of drones synchronized as a single lethal hive mind. The American electronic warfare specialists didn't need to hijack every drone. They only had to corrupt 15% of the data packets. The results were catastrophic for the IRGC. As the corrupted packets hit the drone's mission computers, the swarm began to experience a total mission desync. Hundreds of millions of dollars of autonomous hardware began to drift aimlessly, misrouting their flight paths and colliding with one another in midair. To the Iranian operators, it looked like a Lazarus virus was spreading through their network. Simultaneously, the U.S. fleet initiated an advanced RF fingerprinting protocol. Every desperate command burst sent from the Iranian mothership to regain control was intercepted, analyzed, and used to geolocate the exact subterranean bunkers and hidden emitters buried deep within the coastal limestone of Qisham Island. The hunters had just provided a high-definition roadmap of their most sensitive command and control nodes to the American Aegis system. The true masterstroke, however, was psychological. The U.S. Navy didn't actually take control of the drones. They simply manipulated the Iranian sensors to make it appear as though they had. When the Iranian commanders saw their drones beginning to circle back toward their own fleet, their Moscow-trained security protocols triggered a state of absolute panic. They believed the Americans had seized the encryption keys and were about to turn the Dragon Swarm into a billion-dollar suicide wave against the Shahid Bagheri itself. Facing a total systemic collapse and the terrifying prospect of their own weapons being used as the final executioner, the Iranian leadership made a desperate, bone-chilling decision. At 9:20 a.m., fearing a complete American hijack, Tehran's Central Command issued the emergency self-destruct order. In a single heartbeat, thousands of Shahed drones, the pride of Iran's asymmetric arsenal, ignited their internal charges and plunged into the churning waters of the Gulf like burning titanium rain. The Dragon Swarm was erased from existence by the hands of the very men who launched them. The humiliation of the IRGC was only beginning. 9:30 a.m. The humiliation of the drone swarm has pushed Tehran to a state of strategic desperation. For the commanders of the IRGC, the loss of their billion-dollar asset demands an immediate visible escalation to save their regional reputation. They play their final, most lethal card, the missile cities. Deep within the jagged limestone cliffs of Qashm Island, the heavy blast doors of subterranean bunkers grind open. The fire control radars for the Noor anti-ship cruise missiles, active radar homing assassins with a 120-kilometer range, scream to life. They lock onto the hull of the USS Delbert D Black with a concentrated pulse of electromagnetic energy. This is a high-stakes standoff in the narrowest part of the strait. The Noor is designed for sea-skimming flight, weaving just meters above the swells to bypass radar detection. At this range, a saturation salvo could ignite a global energy crisis and trigger a theater-wide war in a single heartbeat. One press of a button would launch a wave of steel that would test the American Aegis shield to its absolute limit. But the U.S. Navy maintains an ice-cold posture. In a display of silent intimidation, the Delbert D Black maintains its steady 18-knot transit. It does not run for open water. It does not even change its heading. The American destroyer intentionally exposes its signature, sending a clear message to the Iranian cliffs: we know your position and we are not afraid of your iron. This is the reality of modern naval dominance. The side with the superior system does not need to flinch. While the Iranians sweat over their launch consoles, the Overwatch makes its move. From the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, loitering over the horizon, EA-18G Growlers launch a salvo of MALDJ flying decoys. These are digital phantoms that can mimic the specific radar cross-section of a Super Hornet or a heavy bomber. Suddenly, the Iranian radar screens are flooded with 50 high-speed targets screaming toward their coast from multiple vectors. Tehran's commanders are thrown into a state of total tactical paralysis. They have exactly 5 seconds to decide: do they fire their remaining missiles at what look like 50 incoming American aircraft, revealing the exact coordinates of their secret subterranean bunkers for an immediate Tomahawk counterstrike, or do they stand down and accept a crushing strategic defeat? It is a duel where the U.S. has already drawn its weapon and leveled it at the opponent's heart, while Iran is still trying to identify which target is real. The IRGC thought they had cornered a giant, but they just realized the giant has been standing behind them the entire time. The standoff is at a fever pitch, and the hunters of the East are one heartbeat away from finding out that in the Strait of Hormuz, the most dangerous threats are the ones that never appear on a map. At 9:45 a.m., as the Iranian commanders finally realized they were staring at a digital mirage, the Mexican standoff ended in absolute strategic silence. Facing the terrifying prospect of losing their entire subterranean missile inventory to a Tomahawk counterstrike, Tehran chose the path of strategic preservation. They killed their fire control radars and ordered a full withdrawal. The Shahid Bagheri, the $1.5 billion paper tiger, was escorted back toward Bandar Abbas under the watchful, high-definition gaze of American drones. We didn't sink the Shahid Bagheri because in the world of high-stakes intelligence, a floating target is more valuable than an underwater wreck. That ship is now a billion-dollar liability. Every time the IRGC starts its engines or activates its sensors, the Pentagon will know their exact intentions before the command is even whispered. We didn't just win a skirmish, we bugged an entire fleet. The USD. Seek a fight, but we are always the ones who end it. In the deep blue of the strait, there is only one rule: don't touch the boat.